Okay, welcome everybody. Glad you're here. Welcome to our Pathwork Village, I like to call it, because it takes everybody here to really stir the pot, make it rich and juicy. So your participation is really eagerly welcomed in any form. So why don't we start just by going inside for a moment, just gently letting the eyes soften. And just allowing the breath to do whatever it wants to do, as if it knows better than the mind how to breathe, how to nourish the body. Just visualize letting the mind go free, like taking a leash off a dog. Letting the breath run free, however it wants to be. You now visualize anything that happened before coming here today, just falling away. Also visualize anything that might be coming up in the future falling away. Just giving ourselves a luxury with each other's support to just simply be here now together. No matter how challenging or demanding the day has been, let's invite in some fresh energy. Really allow this time together to matter. Give our hearts consent to it being important. And to your presence being important here. Taking another moment, breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in the freshness of now and breathing out the past and the future, just letting it go. Slowly coming back to the circle, letting the eyes open, and just looking at the 15 faces here, yours included. So we'll start like we often do, just with a go round to say your name and where you are, and also a sentence or two, what you're noticing right now, whatever time it is where you are. And anybody can start.
I'm Mara from Northern California. I loved the breath work intro. I needed that today, and glad to be here.
Welcome, Mara.
Thanks.
Hi, this is Tina calling from California in the Bay Area near San Francisco. And I guess I'm feeling pretty relaxed right now. It's about 5 o'clock in the evening.
Welcome, Tina.
Thanks.
Hi, my name's Kath. I'm in Queensland in Australia, and we've just had rain overnight, so it just feels really lovely and cool in that sort of really refreshing way. Yeah.
Welcome, Kath.
I'm Carl. I'm outside Philadelphia on the East Coast of the United States. I'm noticing that it feels late, just late in the day for me, and I'm very glad to be here, and I'm willing. I'm present and willing. Willing comes to my mind. I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
I'm Lorena from Mexico City, and it's nice around here. There's light and nice weather. It's calm. Thank you.
Welcome, Lorena.
I'm Karen in northern Wisconsin, where we still haven't had a frost, which is really unusual, and then beautiful days just keep coming.
Welcome, Karen.
Hi, I'm Pam, and I'm from Western Maryland. This is my first time that I've been in contact with anyone that had anything to do as far as one-on-one with the path work. And it's just, I'm just anticipating, it's just wonderful to finally be in touch. Thanks for offering this program.
I feel your fresh energy, Pam. It's nice.
I'm Frank in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm just feeling good, nice, calm, happy to be here.
Mhm.
I'm Esther Mulroy from Marblehead, Massachusetts, and I'm kind of looking for the solar flare northern lights that are supposed to happen tonight. I guess some solar flares left.
Mhm.
And I'm also a little anxiety, I think, because I was rushing around to be on time and I'm late. So
Welcome,
I
Esther.
missed the.
I'm Pat here in Seven Oaks Retreat in Virginia. A little anxious tonight. I got a big trip coming up. So I'm going to take an opportunity to land here for a short before I go back to the busyness of getting ready for that.
Mhm. Welcome, Pat. Don't be bashful.
Hi, so my name is Janie and I'm from South Jersey. And I feel a lot of pressure having to answer how I'm feeling in this moment. I don't know,
Uh-huh.
but I am happy to be here. And I'm curious about what you have to share with us, Brian, about this lecture.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Jen.
so thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Just as you are. Okay, anyone else before we open up here?
Yeah, hi, this is Kay. I'm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina tonight. I just got done work as usual and had a little dinner, and I'm looking forward to hearing all about frustration, which I've been feeling a lot of lately.
Mhm. Welcome, Kay.
Denise in Castle Rock, Colorado. Definitely feeling the weather changing, and yeah, looking forward to some guidance with this lecture because I'm struggling with this particular topic right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Christy, did you want to say anything? Okay.
Hi. Sorry about that.
Good.
I'm Christy White from Vermont.
Mhm.
I'm Esther's first cousin, and she's told me a lot about this, and I'm looking forward to it. I've had a lot of anxiety in the recent past.
Mhm. Okay, welcome, Christy. So many of you have been here before with me, and you know that I really invite interaction at any time. And I may not see you if you just raise your hand. What I want you to do is feel comfortable to unmute yourself and speak up and be heard, right? At any time. Like, this is a fascinating piece of the pathwork material, this lecture. And it's one of those pieces that's where the guide is inviting us to really look with softer cognitive eyes and more from our deeper knowing and intuition at what's being shared here. That this is one of those areas where, you know, the mind can be a limiting factor in really understanding a deeper truth. The mind wants to know, is it this or is it that, right? Is this true or this is false? And in this particular lecture, especially, it reminds me of that quote that says, the opposite of a profound truth is often another profound truth, right? That deeper wisdom really lies in this middle ground where you can't reduce it to A or B, it's A and B. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about is both A and B. What has helped me so much personally with this lecture is it seems like a lot of the path work is about really looking at yourself, looking at your images, your false belief, your, you know, the feelings you haven't wanted to feel, so forth and so on. And it's not uncommon, even after years of work with the same things over and over, feeling like, you know, I'm making some progress, but I just don't feel free of what my struggles are. And that can be discouraging, right? Like, am I ever going to get through this? Well, in 149, the guide is saying is that while your own personal struggles are really important to face and look at, the deeper reason we're all struggling really has nothing to do with our own individual limitations or trauma or personal history, right? Just the very nature of being a human being is where our deeper struggles come from. So what the guy says in this lecture that's so fascinating is basically this, that the most powerful force in the universe is this cosmic pull that's in every particle of existence. It's in everything. It's in us, it's all around us. And it's pulling us along towards connection with other human beings, towards mutuality, towards love, towards fulfillment, towards happiness. That this very cosmic force is all those things combined. Anything that you can imagine that would be expansive and nourishing, enlightening, pleasurable, satisfying, creative, is all part of this cosmic pull, this life force that's in every particle of us. Okay? So, wow, what's wrong with that, right? Well, the problem comes with our humanity, which is we also have this mixed blessing of an individual consciousness. We really think of ourselves as a separate thing from everything else. In some ways, we think we're better than everything else. Other ways, we think we're less than, right? So we're really kind of caught up. So hard to escape from this individual consciousness. And when this individual consciousness feels this cosmic pull, it just naturally resists because it's bigger than the individual consciousness, right? The individual consciousness doesn't know what to do. It's afraid, doesn't trust, it resists, right? And so what this lecture is saying is that while we are mostly identified with our pain, our disappointment, our frustration, our sadness, coming from things that we struggle with around us, relationships, job, finances, family, right? That while all those things have some effect on us, the real source of our unhappiness is where we're resisting this cosmic pull. Yet, for most of us, this resistance is unconscious. We don't even know we're resisting it. And to try to really see where we're doing that, we have to reach down into the unconscious. It's sort of like looking at your back in a mirror. You know, you can try, but you just get little glimpses of it at a time, right? It's like dropping a stone into a well and listening for it to hit the bottom. You know, how deep down is that? So remember, this resistance to the cosmic pull, to the life force, is not a personal flaw or weakness in any one of us. It's just an instinctive human reflex that comes from having a mind that lives in its own little world and tries to see everything through that little world. So this is really a challenge for the mind to understand, even, you know, as you read the lecture, even as you hear me talking about it, right? So we've got to sort of open up a more intuitive sense. And one way we invite you to do that right now is just sort of close your eyes for a moment again, gently, and just visualize yourself lying on your back. Your hands are out to your sides in a very comfortable way. Your legs relaxed. And you just feel every part of you sinking in to what's supporting you. You're really just letting go. And suddenly you're aware that what's holding you is really warm. Just the right temperature. Now you realize it's wet, that you're actually floating on top of water. Just notice what happens when you realize that. Any little reflex, any little thought, any little flicker, just notice it. As you settle in to the fact that now you're floating somehow on your back in this water very comfortably, seems to be working just fine without you doing anything. Suddenly you notice you're starting to move. The water is starting to carry you. Slowly. Nothing jolting. What do you notice as you're aware now? You're starting to move without any idea of what's happening, where you're going, what's moving you. Just be with us for a moment. Just notice all the little sensations, feelings, thoughts. Opening your eyes and coming back to the circle. And let's just take a moment or two. I invite you to share. What was that like for you? What did you notice?
I noticed that there is a part of me that really wants to let go into the mystery.
Mhm.
But there's another part of me that's like guarding against the chaos of the rest of humanity.
Mhm.
It feels like there's like safety in separation.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah. Thank you, Frank.
So I felt like I felt with I've done exercise myself, things like that in the past, meditation, but just floating, falling, being, sort of welcoming the abyss, welcoming the great fluidity. And I have this voice that says, but you're just not doing anything. This is not life. And it just says, you know, this is blissful, but. So it's like, how long do you want to do this for? What are we going to do next? So that's just there.
Thank you, Carl.
My favorite thing in the world is to float in the salt water. So when I first realized I was floating in salt water, I was so happy and I was really relaxed and just allowing the water to carry me. But then when you said the water was starting to move, I noticed that I needed to open my eyes and see where I was going because I didn't fully trust the flow. It's like I need to be in control here, not something else.
Mhm.
That was what I experienced.
Yeah. Thank you, Kay.
I was okay until you mentioned the water. And then I felt some fear because I'm not really a very good swimmer. So I tried to imagine myself on an air mattress or something so it would be easier, but that was really interesting that it was hard to imagine floating on water when I'm not very good at that.
Thank you, Karen.
Yes, in my case, it was nice to float in the water, but when you said that the water starts to move, I was like caring that I was not going to hit someone or that I have my space, no, that there were more around me, but I didn't want to hit or to touch, to have this contact with the others.
Thank you, Lorena.
I was when I was in the water from the warm, actually I never ended up on the warm wood floor. I was in the air. So I went onto the water and I could feel the motion of the rocking. And then when it was to flow, was like, this is nice just where it is. So I wasn't really willing to go with the flow, go on that flow journey, which is interesting to note.
I too had a hard time with the transition from being on the ground to being in the water. I started having all kinds of like jerking motions. Then I realized I was only making everything worse. So I was able to surrender and let go. And I really liked it when the water moved. But it was very interesting to see how it changed. And I'm not a good swimmer either. So.
Thank you, Mara.
It was interesting to me how quickly the resistance came that I have a problem I have to fix. Like my mind went right, but it was like how quick the resistance came in. Yeah.
Thank you, Jane.
Well, I too love floating in the water. So that was really delightful when you added that. And then the movement, I felt like it was towards a light. So it's like, oh, what a lovely way to go home. Then I also was caught with resistance because it was like, I floated in the swimming pool a lot and you have the opportunity to bump your head if you're moving. So now I had to see where I was going so I wouldn't bump my head on the way home. So I had to add a control piece to it. So
yeah. Thank you, Pat. Anyone else want to share what it was like for you? So I'm curious what it's like to realize.
This is a
Go
kind
ahead.
of daily experience because you can. Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I swim pretty much every day. So this is kind of a very familiar experience and also, you know, just kind of like going into that no mind state. But then there's sort of like hindrance of the body re-emerged.
Thank you, Amy. So when most of us think about our lack of trust, we think about our trust issues, we think about the ways we've been hurt or let down or betrayed, and again, all of those are real, yet I'm really inviting you to feel a fascination that there's something beyond just the personal, right? Even if we address all those personal things, we're still left with this struggle our individual consciousness has to surrender to a larger force. Like it's, the individual consciousness says no. Right. So by the same token, when we think about where we're unhappy or struggling or lacking fulfillment, we often think about, you know, our own deficit, right? Where we're somehow, if I had done this instead of that, right? Or I didn't get this, I got too much of that, or whatever the struggle, the hardship, the adversity has been in our life. Yet again, the guide is saying, really, that's not where the unhappiness comes from. The unhappiness comes from resisting the life force, this cosmic pull, that is the very essence of pleasure, of safety, of wisdom, of love, right? So how do we get this individual consciousness to sort of loosen its grip, right? Well, you know, another word for the individual consciousness is the ego, and many spiritual traditions see the ego as like a suspect, right? The ego is the problem, and the pathwork is quite revolutionary in its view of the ego, which is the healthy ego is essential. It's necessary. You just can't let it do all the driving. Right? So the purpose of the healthy ego, the pathwork says, is really to call on the real self, the inner knowing, right? This part of us that actually has that cosmic pull already inside of us. And to really learn to keep turning to it and asking it to show itself to us. Let me feel you. Where are you? I don't feel you. You know, I'm listening. Talk to me. Like it takes that that's the real practice, is shifting our identification. We talked about this in a recent lecture 195, right? Shifting the identification to the spiritual self to overcome negativity, right? I'm so used to thinking of myself as this being with this driver's license and, you know, this identity and this gender and this income and this relationship history, when that's really a very small part of who we actually are. Yet shifting that identification is like learning a dance or to play a musical instrument or to speak a new language, right? It takes practice, ongoing practice. And the first step to the practice is really finding the motivation, the desire, and this view that, like, my largest struggles in life come from the part of me that's resisting something that is so safe and wonderful and wise and caring and loving for me personally. Right? Begin that inquiry and not turning it too much inside, like, why won't I surrender to that? Realizing, like, I just have a struggle like every human being does to do this. And, you know, what are the steps? Any questions so far? Like, just with, especially around this whole idea that just doing more of the same kind of work on the A through Z of our issues and our resistance and our lower self, it's all good work. The guide says you need to do that to get to this deeper piece. Right? And when you get to this deeper piece of the no, of the resistance, now you're really where change can, significant change can happen.
One of the things it talked about is that there is illusion, and negativity is illusion too. And I think doing the personal work, it makes it easier to believe that that's true, so that you can withstand whatever anxiety or other feelings come up and get to the bottom of them. I thought that was helpful. And also, I really got this time about how there aren't two forces. I think I always still assumed that there were good, evil, you know, dark, light, but that there one, we deform the light in our conflicts or struggles, or and it's really one force. And then if you get to the depths of feeling, you reconvert back to God energy or life energy. Or I really, those two things really leapt out at me on this lecture.
So what's resonating with me is the when I have had blissful moments, breakthroughs, they as much as I can recall, they've come through complete surrender. Somehow, where there was some grace that I didn't do it. And I can remember many times when I've struggled that it came from wanting to know what to do, wanting to figure it out and wanting to make it happen. And then when you were talking about resisting the wonderful, blissful thing, just an example of that, and that I can remember as a child, sometimes with my wife, not very often these days, but it's like when I'm feeling upset and someone goes, well, what do you need? Let me help you. And it's like, no, never mind. It's like this fear of that something will be wrong if I allow that to happen. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Thank you, Carl. So one of the fascinating and perplexing teachings in the pathwork is around negative pleasure, right? Not news to any of you. And negative pleasure is really elusive to fully understand. I notice sometimes I think I'm really getting it, and then it's like I lose it. Right? And part of it, I think, is that when we think pleasure, we think, oh, it feels good to the conscious mind, right? So if it's negative, how can it feel good? Well, remember, negative pleasure is talking about the unconscious part of us getting off on something that's unpleasant to the conscious part of us, right? So a fascinating view I've never really picked up before in 149 about negative pleasures, that so when we resist this cosmic pull, we struggle, right? We feel, and the struggle is pain. And remember, this cosmic pull is especially about connecting with another human being. That's where it's right there in our face, right? All the feelings that come up, longing for and fear of closeness, right? All that. So what happens is when we're feeling this pain of holding ourselves back, that pain starts to form thoughts in our head that this person is the reason I'm feeling bad, right? So now, guess what? Now we want to hurt them back, right? And wow, this really hit me. Like I can remember times that I've been crabby towards somebody that I love that cares about me, right? And I'm wondering, like, wow, what was that about? Well, it really makes sense that where I'm resisting this larger pull to connect, the pain of that is going to find ways to attach. Either I'm going to blame someone or I'm going to blame myself, right? So what happens is when I blame someone and I hurt them, I actually get off on doing that. You know, it's a hard thing to admit to ourselves. Or we wouldn't do it if there wasn't some part of us getting off on it. And at the same time, we can also get off by somebody hurting us, even though that seems like the most awful thing in the world. Why would I want to create situations where people are letting me down, disappointing me, right? Well, I'm actually getting drawn to those kinds of situations. I'm attracted to people from this place that are going to disappoint me or criticize me or not be there for me, right? It's fascinating. This idea that, you know, the price we pay on the human level for resisting this cosmic pull that only means us well, right? There's nothing in that cosmic pull in the life force that we need to be careful with. Right? So when we're resisting this cosmic pull, because we don't trust it, lo and behold, we don't trust ourselves, right? That's That's another complication because the life force is in us, right? So now we're not trusting the life force. Where we don't trust the life force, we're not trusting the life force moving through us. And the way it moves through us is through our impulses, right? And the kind of impulses we're talking about here, it's not like, well, I'm going to go have a quart of ice cream, right? It's more like, I want to trust people, right? Like that. That's part of the cosmic pull. Like, and then the individual consciousness says, well, you can't trust everybody. Don't be naive, right? So now we have the negative pleasure. We're struggling with the people around us, and we're also struggling with ourselves. So I'm going to invite you to consider for a moment, like, in, the resistance to the life force, are there some impulses you notice that you judge in yourself? Like when I was trying to make my own list, I thought about the part of me that just wants to naturally trust people. And then the caution, like, wow, that's really naive, right? Another one is the part of me that just likes to do nothing, just to relax and be, right, Carl? And the part of me that says, what do you got to show for that, right? That's just laziness. So just take a moment and just be curious, like, what about your own impulses of any kind that you struggle with, we judge them, we consider them to be bad, yet actually, not only are they not bad, because they have the life force in them, it's part of what can inform us when we turn to them and realize they're messengers of light, they're bearers of light, the guide says in this lecture. A fascinating phrase, right? One might be, just to stimulate your thinking, any little impulse to be creative in any way, right? And you notice a voice coming in saying, well, you're no good at that. What will that lead to? Just without even thinking about it, just even see if you can go inside for a moment and feel some of those impulses that are part of your expanding into life, coming more out into life. That this individual consciousness wants to step on and short circuit, pull you back. You ever find yourself suddenly wanting to sing a song out loud and then hearing a voice like, nah, I can't sing. Or anything like that, right? That, again, where the life force wants to express something, joy or sadness, it's the same thing, right? One energy current. I'd like to have more friends. And again, it's more, even without overthinking it, just feel, again, the struggle that's inside us now around this cosmic pull, the life force, right? Life force is not just the pull towards others, it's towards our full expression into life. And when we resist this pull, we're going to not trust ourselves, our impulses. And
You know, Brian, when I read these lectures, I try to apply them to the circumstances of my life, the circumstances that I deal with day in and day out, you know, because I really believe that they can be applied that way. So, you know, my personal circumstance is that I'm managing my mother's care. She's almost 99 years old. And needless to say, she's confused, okay? But she's still strong-willed, and she loves to impose her confusion upon everyone in the room, you know? And I spend a lot of my energy guarding against this chaos and confusion that's spewing out of her when I go over there to, you know, help out with her and help take care of her. And there's this part of me that's like, no, I cannot let her confusion, you know, take over my life. I'm so guarded against that. Because I feel like if I just, you know, let her have her way with me, she's just gonna, you know, fuck up my life completely. You know what I mean? So, yet I know, on the other hand, that it's like, she's, you know, she's fragile. And she needs some love and compassion. And how is it that I can find this? I mean, that's where that life force that you're talking about actually is. It's like, okay, Frank, where you reach out there and grab that life force and bring in some compassion and bring in some love. And, you know, even though your mother wounded the hell out of you when you were a small child and you've been trying to fix this shit forever, you know, try to reach into that beautiful place of the cosmic force and find some immediate compassion for your mother when you go over there and be with her. And I'll tell you, I struggle with that, you know? I struggle with that. I mean, because I think that's where the life force is in my life. It's like in acting in a different way, instead of this guarded way, like, oh my God, I need to protect my own sanity from this craziness that my mother is spewing all over my life, you know? So that's what came up in me when I read the lecture today. Sure, out there, if in a perfect world, my mother would already be in the afterlife and I wouldn't have to deal with taking care of her, you know? And I could concentrate on making my personal space more blissful and everything like that. But that's not what I'm afforded, it seems, right now. So that cosmic, beautiful cosmic life force seems like, to me, like I don't know, it's somewhere out there, somewhere out there. It's not here right now. It's just somewhere out there. And I'm trying to like reel it in, casting a line and trying to hook onto it and reel it in.
yeah.
But I know it's closer than that. Only problem is I can't touch it. And I feel this way a lot about, so let's say, the human predicament in general. It's like, okay, I've been on this pathwork path for like 7 or 8 years now. I went to TP. I did 5 years of TP. It was beautiful to go there and be with my classmates on the 4x4s. But now I'm out again in this hellhole of the real world where, you know, all the forces of humanity are so chaotic and confusing that I can't seem to find my little piece of space of peace.
Yeah.
You know? Anyways.
Thank you, Frank.
Get real with it.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. And, you know, my mother's 94. I love her and I'm afraid of her. I want her love and I don't want to let her too close because there's been a lot of hurt.
Right.
So you really have my empathy with your part of this riddle here. So I'm curious, Frank, is there something you read in the lecture that actually heartened you around this dynamic that you find yourself in life, not just with your mother, but really in the world we're living in right now? The wheels are coming off the bus, right? Sure looks that way. Like,
actually, no, Brian, I didn't find anything that really heartened me. Most of what I read kind of just disheartened me in terms of my inability to, you know, bring in
okay.
the life force. Yeah.
Well, before we're finished with this lecture tonight and in 2 weeks, I want to find something that really lands in you. That's my commitment, right?
I suspect you will. I've seen the way you work.
Well, I'm looking for it for myself, so I'll have something to share, right?
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Of course, Jane. How can I help you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know, you know, what came to my mind as I was listening to Frank speak about his real life situation is like what I could relate to that was the part of me that wants to like what I wrote, that one does not wash out the other, right? Like you can't, I feel like I can't, well, what I'm learning is that it's like I can't call on the cosmic pill because I don't want to feel the pain of what I'm in the moment.
Right.
So like when I was listening to, like, my mind was like, oh, okay, well, what I'm hearing is that one does not wash out the other. Like somehow they have to, it's like a magical moment when they come together. But that's just what I was hearing, Frank, when you were, you know, sharing your story. It's like, yeah, I understand that. Like I do that too. It's like when I'm feeling this, I don't want to feel it, especially in relationship to my children. You know, it's like, ugh, I don't like this part of them and I react, but yet I want to react from a different place. And it's like, oh, how do you, yeah, like I just know one does not wash out the other. Yeah, that's what I just.
Yeah. So one doesn't wash out the other. Yet the part I'm curious about is in this work, we tend to be so focused on what our issues and problems are and work on them over and over again with really the expectation that one day I'm going to overcome my issues and I'll be free. Yet what the guide is saying here is that's actually not true. Like the purpose of working on your issues is so you can say, okay, I've done my work, I still have this struggle. There must be something more at a deeper level that I haven't gotten yet than my own wounding, my own story, my own sense of my limitations, right? So what happens though, so we could do all the work on our individual journey and still not find the freedom that we're seeking. Yeah, what the guide is offering here is that if we turn to where we're resisting the life force, we start to feel freedom and pleasure that now trickles down to the other situations in our life. our children, our elderly parents, or we just have more spaciousness inside of us. But there's some part of us that's happy and feeling pleasure, even with these lifelong situations we've been navigating, right? Remember, this life force is not an abstraction. It's the pleasure principle. It's pleasure itself. It's happiness itself. That's what the guide is saying here. Like, it's not like believing in something. It's like having that feeling, that cosmic feeling, right? Like, wow, I feel free and happy right now. And I know in a bit I'll go back into my struggles, right? Right now I'm feeling, I want to come back here. I want to find my way back here. This is what we're talking about, right? It's pleasure is the measure. And if there was no pleasure, I wouldn't be interested.
So like what you're saying, like no matter what's going on, it's all okay.
Right.
Like, everything's okay.
Like,
Like,
feeling.
yeah.
It's a superimposed thought form, right?
Yeah. It's like
spiritual bypassing.
Yeah.
So,
Go
oh,
ahead.
sorry.
Amy,
Yeah.
did you want
Okay. So I didn't have a chance to read the lecture, so I'm not sure if what I'm about to say is what you're saying. And I wouldn't go as far as to say happiness, but I have found for myself that even with the stuff that I'm struggling with something really perplexing lately. I can like sit and relax and let go of all the stuff and come to a place that's just really, really peaceful, really peaceful. In fact, I spent quite a bit of time today just doing that, just like letting go of everything and coming to sort of like, it's kind of like behind how I feel and like the space behind what I'm thinking and feeling and blah, blah, blah. If I just really just relax into that kind of background, it is always peaceful and come there. I can't quite get to happy or pleasure necessarily, but I can get to peace. Is that the same thing you're saying?
Well, that's what we're talking about. Right?
Okay.
Wanting the experience of.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's pretty much it.
So I'm aware that it'd be fair enough for many of you to be wondering, okay, Brian, that sounds like a lot to try to do. Right? It sounds complicated, and it is to the mind, right? So to the heart, though, the heart already wants to surrender. That's just the nature of the heart, right? And we're talking about surrender with a capital S here, right? Not giving up, but wanting to just let go and be in life. So the mind can seem like such an imposing obstacle. How are we going to overcome this lifelong resistance to the life force, right? To surrender. Well, the guide is saying, actually, it only takes a tiny little effort. Right? Coming from the heart, right? The desire, the longing, right? The power of, I want a different experience than I've been having up till now. I don't know how to get there. I can feel my desire. Right? That alone sets a whole process in motion. Because now we've opened a tiny little portal to the life force to come in. And it, you know, it knows what to do. It starts speaking to us in the still small voice of the real self. When we listen, you know, it'll just tell us what to do. Take the day off. Why don't you go to the beach tomorrow? Or you want to garden? Have you ever thought about gardening? Or again, you know, these impulses are not just harebrained thoughts. There's something in our deeper self that's bubbling up, that's wanting to express joy, vitality, creativity, right? And yet, remember, our individual consciousness is afraid of that. It wants to keep us sort of safe on the shelf, right? Just be an elf on the shelf. Don't stand out, don't take risks. Who do you think you are? You think you're special? Well, yeah, you know, each one of us is actually special. And what we're doing here is trying to uncover that, experience that, you know, and again, you know, the life force is not an abstraction. When you feel happy, when you feel good, that's what you're feeling. Whatever it is you did that you think made you feel good, it actually just set the life force in you in motion, flowing. So to, you know, help to overcome the abstractions around the pleasure principle of the life force, just notice when you're feeling good, right? And go, oh, that's what this is. This is just my natural state, right? This is the grand we're wanting, more of the grand and less of the grind, right? There's a lot of grind in living the complicated modern life we're all trying to hold together, right? So what about trusting your impulses more? I'm curious if there's been any more sense of that for any of us here. Like, what are my impulses that I'm shutting down? I'm judging them. And they're actually what wants to open me up, right? Can be something as simple as doodling with a pencil. I have this little impulse to do a doodle, right? Really be curious about, between now and the time we meet again, what these little impulses might be that are actually the bearers of light in you. You know, we keep thinking awakening is going to land on our front door with a brass band and banners flying, right? Yet it's really through these little impulses that we start turning towards, making room for. That our resistance to the cosmic pull is saying, oh, that's silly, right?
Yeah, Brian, I had a good experience with like following an impulse that I think fits what you're saying. I was at this, invited to meet up with some friends at this kirtan thing where they were playing music, and the friends didn't show up. And I was a little grouchy about that because it wasn't really my scene. But I was sitting there and they were playing this music and it was very repetitive and it had a great rhythm to it. And this is a very spiritual, open community that I was visiting. So they were very open. But I got this, and I was sitting towards the back and I got this impulse. Like I just wanted to stand up and move. We were all sitting on the floor. And, you know, for a second there, I thought, well, you don't know any of these people, and I don't know if dancing is really what they do. And then I thought, you know, I'm in the back. I feel like moving. So I just got up and I started to move. And it felt so good. And I think the energy of that, I mean, everybody else got up and started dancing too. It was just, you know, I followed that intuitive voice that said, you're feeling it, just move. And, you know, and then next thing I knew, everyone was moving, and it was really in the flow, and it was happy. And I didn't listen to that resistance of, well, you don't know them. I don't know if dancing happens here. And I just went, no, that's okay. So that was my follow your impulse moment of last week.
Tina, that's a great example of the kinds of impulses that are knocking on our door all day and all night, you know. And again, we're suspicious of them because we're suspicious of the life force, right? We want something important. We want something we can say, I know what this is, right? So that's part of my invitation for the next 2 weeks, is to just be curious about these little bearers of light in your impulses that, and notice what wants to come in and dismiss them, right? What it says, what the shutdown is on those impulses. And, you know, there's this fascinating line in this lecture where the guide says, we're so distrustful of our impulses, we don't trust ourselves, that we're afraid that we'll just be overtaken by it. And so the guide says we use the worst case scenario of what might happen to convince us not to give into that impulse, right? So for example, one thing I've heard from people is, well, you just can't eat ice cream all the time. Right? Okay. But once in a while, ice cream is really wonderful, right? But, you know, we're surrounded by so many food choices now. Many of us are having to regiment ourselves, right? Can't eat too much of this or too much of that, and we're afraid of giving in to, like, wow, I just want to put a piece of chocolate in my mouth right now. I just feel the pleasure of it, like, wow, how good this is. What an amazing thing chocolate is, right? Yet the resistance, the impulse is saying, don't eat the whole bar. Well, guess what happens now? I'm going to eat the whole bar. Nothing is going to tell me what to do. Right. So you see what's happening there. As a substitute for the real pleasure, now I'm having the negative pleasure of rebellion, right? Even at my own expense. Instead of the simple pleasure of having that bowl of ice cream, now I'm eating the whole container just to prove something to who, right? Towards the voice in my head that is trying to shut me down all the time. So a lot of the ways we think we can't control ourselves is actually coming from trying to over-control ourselves. Isn't that interesting? The guy says in other places that pleasure is self-regulating. Just consider that for a moment. Pure pleasure is self-regulating. It knows how much to enjoy. It knows when it's had enough. So if we're having trouble regulating our pleasure, it's because there's a struggle going on within us around that very pleasure. So I want to invite anyone else really speak up around anything that you're noticing in your own life that is getting stirred here by some of what we've been holding. Right? Like, remember our natural state to be in pleasure, to be in fulfillment. And where we're not, there's a struggle keeping us from that. In addition to whatever our individual struggle is, we're making room for this just larger fear of letting go to the life force. Carl, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I have two things. One is that I can feel the part of me that it seems like forever has been saying, I'm all in as long as it's not like this. Once it changes and it's to my liking, I am all in.
Mhm.
And it feels absolutely futile. The other is I can see clearly from this discussion tonight and these examples how my chosen defense of this quote predicament that I feel like myself that I find myself has kept me from the life force, and the label for my particular defense masochism, and that is I won't really worry about the things that bug me. I won't let them bother me, and I'll be fine. And I can see how that has directly done the opposite of keeping me in both forces all of life, on and on and on. So there's a bit of a clarity there. So thanks.
Can you feel that clarity as well as the thought of it that you've expressed so clearly here?
Well, I can feel the allowing myself to want the bliss and the life force and the flow, and to acknowledge and be okay from a feeling sense of what comes along with that. All of life, it's not just one thing, it's like all of feeling. And when I do it, it's actually not that bad, but I've spent so long keeping myself from it. So that's a desire, and that's an experiment, and it's a lot more than it has been in years past, but man, it is a work in progress.
Thank you, Carl. Yeah, if you speak up and share, what we can do is just help you energetically tie the teaching to some part of your life. Just in saying it, you'll hear yourself saying something that'll be useful for yourself. That's the power of the witness in our village here.
I could share something. I went over to visit my sister's son today, so my nephew, and my sister recently passed in April. So I wasn't sure if they wanted to see me or not, and they hadn't too much in the past. But to me, like, family together is like been, a main value for me. And so I I think I had it in the back of my head that, I won't see them. And so I went over anyway, knowing that I probably wouldn't see them because they're really busy with, trying to pack up the house. And, yeah, it was almost like, I wanted to experience that sort of negative pleasure. So that, yeah, that's hard for me to see how I set myself up for that.
Yeah. Wow.
And so that's probably why I don't end up so far floating down the river, letting them be, just let people be, if I don't have to be in somebody's life that wants to exit right from me at this time. Maybe who knows what's down the line, but I could, if I was floating down the river, I might actually have been able to feel the pain that I was feeling, the negative about having that negative sort of pleasure to be left out and just really sit with it. Breathe and create my own picture at home, which I did do. I came home and created my own crazy little picture. I shouldn't call it crazy, but I decided the tree didn't have to be brown, and the leaves didn't have to be, they could be pink. So.
Thank you, Esther. The gift for me and what you're sharing is one of the beautiful things about our Pathwork Village is that we don't have to be embarrassed or ashamed of where we are. We all have negative pleasure. We all have vicious circles that we create, right? We're really here to, in accepting each other, a deeper sense of accepting ourselves. Like, yeah, I can relate to that. I do that too. There's so much self-judgment in us from our upbringing, from our culture, from our religious traditions, right? And there's some joy in just being open about seeing our negative pleasure. Like, that's a great discovery, because as you're modeling here, there's some freedom in just owning it for what it is, right? Yeah.
I just want to thank Frank for what he said about his mother, because when I went to the kitchen to get something to drink, something came to me that I have been wanting to know the answer to for I don't know how long. I am such an introvert. I get so anxious in crowds, groups of people. I don't have anything to say, anything like that. And all of a sudden in the kitchen, it came to me, because I've been thinking lately, because I was anti-mother. She was a wonderful mother in her own way. She had so many talents. She gardening, cooking, sewing, music, singing. And I had none. It always amazed me that I had no talents whatsoever in life until I found typing in high school. I thought, well, that's something. And it was the only one I ever found. And I never figured it out until I started on path. Well, I first got on the path in AA and found the spiritual path, but a lot of people in AA don't find it. And so they stop at a certain point. Once they get comfortable, what's why, like, when I hear how many years you guys have been doing it, once you heal some places in yourself, some people get comfortable and they stop. It's like, okay, I can go on with life now. I don't get severely depressed anymore. I don't get, I'm in a happy low and I can, that's all. But when you keep going, a lot more comes out, and it's fascinating. But anyway, what I found in the kitchen was the mother was so social. Everything she did, she was loving. I mean, I won't say loving. She had barbs on her and I felt the barbs, and I rejected everything she did. I wouldn't learn to cook from her. I wouldn't learn to sew. I wouldn't learn, you know what I mean? I refused to into her world. I refused to be around her. And it never occurred to me until tonight that the reason I'm so introverted is because she was so social. Maybe that I haven't followed it yet, but I felt such hope rise in me. Wow. that it was like, oh my goodness, all this time. I mean, I even tried to go to a church a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, and it was like, I just want to binge, you know what I mean? And I was like, what is wrong with me? I've said that all my life, but now I know a lot of the places that are wrong. But I just want to, I appreciate what you said, and I tried to figure it out. In AA, they said, work from the outside in. The ones that are closer to you are the hardest ones to unravel. And so that's what I did. I stopped worrying about, because I kept trying to fix my relationship with my mother. Well, she died a couple of years ago and it wasn't fixed. I was there for her and I lived with her for the last years and took care of her and stuff, but it was a very distant, you know what I mean? It was like, I just couldn't trust her. I just couldn't get close to her. So but I still want to figure it out because in the guide, the pathwork, I'm on 99. I found the pathwork maybe 10 years ago, but then things happened. And now I started reading from the beginning and I'm on 90 something. But in that time, I realized that the spirits are around us. I'd never thought of that before. And that she's rooting for, they can heal from what we heal within us. So just because my mother died doesn't mean I stop working on that, because one, it's still affecting me. And it really clamps down your life. You don't have the freedom, the liberty that comes from the knowing the Holy Spirit. I don't know why she doesn't speak of the Holy Spirit as the higher reality, the higher self, but I found it in AA. And I don't hear you speak of it. I could tell you someday my story and how I found it, because it's a path and why people don't find it. But anyway, I really appreciate that tonight. I can't wait to look through it and then go out and test it out. That the reason I resist people is because of her, because I refuse to meet with her on anything that she, that I would have to be close on her with. The resistance, the rebellion against her for the hurt that I had as a child, like this past says, you bring it up through with you. You don't, because you don't know how to handle it when you're a child. Anyway, I'm sorry I took so long, but
Pam, thank you.
I do appreciate it.
So remember, we're not seeing the part of us that's saying no to life like some kind of fault or flaw. We're looking at it with human understanding. This is just part of human nature, yet because we're also more than just this human mind, we don't want to be confined by the human mind, right? We want to open up to a deeper reality. So we actually want to be compassionate towards the part of us that gets attached to its little comfort patterns. It's doing the best it knows how. It's just not enough for our capacity to feel pleasure, creativity, connection, love, fulfillment. So, the guy uses that word fulfillment a lot in the lecture. That's really a rich word. Just sort of includes all the ways we can connect with different forms of our longing, right? The guide's not saying, well, you can be a little bit more happy, but don't be too unrealistic, right? God is saying bliss, you can have bliss, you can have pleasure supreme. That's quite a promise. So how about someone else, as we're getting ready to come in for landing in a few minutes? So I want to make room for the second part of the lecture that we'll take on next time, which is around frustration. And I don't think there's anybody here, myself included, that isn't familiar with frustration. All it takes.
Is that lecture 75?
Beg your pardon?
Is that lecture 75?
No, 149, the same lecture that we're on today. The second part is around frustration.
And it's next week?
In 2 weeks. Right. So anyway,
I'm sorry.
There's so many things that can happen and make us frustrated. The light turns green, the car in front of us doesn't move. Right? Computer locks up. So forth and so on. And most of us really just feel like frustration is just part of of modern life, and we just got to grin and bear it until whatever caused the frustration is over. Yet what we'll look at next time is, well, there may be something that's really happening that's triggering the frustration. Really, the frustration is happening at a deeper level, and this outer event is just triggering that deeper level. And next time we meet, we'll do some exploration around, well, what is that deeper level and how can I let it go? So in addition to the homework around just noticing what those impulses might be that you're dismissing or shutting down from your individual consciousness, what are some of the reoccurring frustrations that you have? Right? And just be curious about them, and what are you noticing about them? And bring some of that discovery to our meeting next time. It's not so much, what is it that makes me frustrated? It's like, what do I notice about myself while I'm feeling frustrated? What are some of the thoughts I'm having? Some of those reoccurring familiar thoughts that I have when I'm frustrated. Life's not fair. I'm no good at this. I don't know how to work computers, or, So anything else before we come in for a landing together? I want to really thank you for being here and being present at the end of a long day. And just take a moment and look at all the faces on the screen. And I want to invite you just to consider unmuting yourself and just saying, thank you for being with me. Thank you for being with me. Thank you, Kath, for being with me.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Hi, Kay. Hi, Coral. Hi, Amy.
Okay.
Hi,
JD.
Brian.
Miss you. Hi, Carl. Hi, Kath.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Come back.
You're looking
you hear?
good, Brian.
Come back, you hear?